The village of Ilesan stirred to life under the golden embrace of dawn, its rhythm dictated by the steady hum of tradition and duty. For Aduni, the eldest daughter of Baba Adeyemi, this morning marked the beginning of an ordeal she had silently dreaded for weeks. The announcement of her marriage to Olale Khan, the village's most revered warrior, loomed over her like a gathering storm. To her family, the match was a triumph, a union that promised status, wealth, and security. But for Aduni, it was the end of a dream, her dream of love, freedom, and Ayo. The river had always been her sanctuary, a place where the chatter of the village faded and her thoughts could flow freely. As she knelt by the water's edge that morning, her fingers tracing patterns in the cool surface, Aduni's heart wrestled with an impossible choice. Her family had raised her to honor their traditions, to embrace the path carved out for her by generations before. Yet her heart pulled her in another direction, toward Ayo, the son of a humble palm wine tapper, whose love had been the one light in her otherwise predictable life. Theirs was a love born in secret, nurtured in the quiet corners of the village and beneath the shade of the Odan tree. While others saw only their differences, her family's status, his lack of it, Aduni had seen his kindness, his strength, and the way he spoke of a future where their love could exist beyond the boundaries of Ilesan. But such dreams felt like distant stars, far beyond her reach. As the sun climbed higher, the village square bustled with energy. Women with colorful wrappers tied around their waists moved in synchronized grace, balancing baskets of yams and vegetables. Men erected a grand canopy at the heart of the square, its poles adorned with cowrie shells and dyed cloth. Children ran in excited circles, their laughter filling the air. The villagers were preparing for a celebration, the formal announcement of Aduni's betrothal to Olale Khan. Baba Adeyemi stood proudly at the center of it all, his voice commanding as he issued instructions to the laborers. This union was his greatest achievement. Olale Khan was everything a father could hope for in a son-in-law, brave, wealthy, and respected by all. To see his daughter married into such prestige was a fulfillment of his deepest ambitions. Aduni returned to her family compound just as her mother, Mama Adeyemi, was overseeing the preparation of ceremonial dishes. Her mother's face, lined with years of hard work, glowed with quiet pride. Aduni knew her parents believed they were giving her the best future possible. She couldn't fault them for their joy, but their pride felt like a chain tightening around her heart. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a warm amber glow over Ilesan, the entire village gathered in the square. Aduni sat with her family, her head bowed beneath the weight of expectation. Across the crowd, Olale Khan stood tall, draped in flowing agbada of deep blue, his shoulders broad and commanding. Coral beads adorned his neck, a symbol of his wealth and status. When Baba Adeyemi stepped forward to address the villagers, his voice carried the authority of a man who had never doubted his decisions. He spoke of honor, legacy, and the blessings of the gods, his words weaving a tapestry of tradition that bound Aduni to her fate. When he finally announced the wedding date, the crowd erupted in cheers, their voices rising in celebration of what they saw as a perfect match. Olale Khan approached Aduni, his face a mask of confidence and pride. As he took her hand in his, the crowd clapped and sang, their joy echoing into the night. But Aduni's heart was elsewhere, lost in the shadows of the forest, where Ayo might still be waiting for her, his dreams of their shared future slipping further out of reach with each passing moment. As the festivities continued, Aduni sat in silence, her face calm, but her mind a storm of conflicting emotions. The cheers of her people rang hollow in her ears. She felt the eyes of the gods watching her, their judgment unknown, as she faced the impossible choice between duty and love. Somewhere deep within her, a faint voice whispered for her to run, to choose her heart over tradition. But in Ilezan, such whispers were dangerous, drowned out by the louder cries of family, honor, and tradition. That night, beneath the starry skies of Ilezan, the stage was set for a tale of love and betrayal that would test the boundaries of tradition and the strength of the human heart. The days following the wedding announcement moved with an unrelenting pace, pulling Aduni deeper into a whirlpool of expectations. The entire village seemed consumed with excitement over the union of Aduni and Olalekan. Women wove elaborate aso-oke fabrics, men brewed gallons of palm wine, and children sang wedding songs at the top of their voices. But while the village celebrated, Aduni's heart grew heavier with each passing moment. For years, she had kept her love for Ayo hidden, tucking it away like a forbidden treasure. Their bond had blossomed in the quiet spaces of Ilezan, in moments stolen away from the prying eyes of the village. They met in secret under the sheltering branches of the ancient Odan tree, where the wind carried their laughter and whispers into the night. Ayo, with his quick smile and unshakable determination, had once been her solace. He was the one who dared to dream of a life beyond the strictures of their world. In his arms, she had glimpsed freedom, but that dream was now slipping away as fast as the river's current that carried her fears downstream. On the third night after the announcement, Aduni stole away from her family compound. The moon hung low in the sky, its pale light illuminating the path she had walked countless times before. The night was quiet, save for the distant hum of crickets and the occasional hoot of an owl. When she reached the riverbank, Ayo was already there, his tall frame outlined against the shimmering water. He waited with an intensity that mirrored her own turmoil. His love for her had never wavered, even as the world around them conspired to tear them apart. Their reunion was bittersweet. For all the joy that his presence brought her, it was laced with the bitter knowledge that time was running out. They sat side by side on the cool grass, the river murmuring softly as if it, too, bore witness to their pain. Ayo's gaze burned with questions, but Aduni could offer no answers. How could she explain the weight of the invisible chains that bound her to her family and their expectations? Ayo's mind, however, was already racing ahead. He had always been the dreamer, the one to paint vivid pictures of a life they could build together. In his heart, he believed in their love with a conviction so strong it seemed to challenge the gods themselves. But even he could not ignore the looming presence of Olalekan, the man chosen for her by her father, by the village, by tradition. As the stars shifted in the night sky, Ayo made a quiet vow to himself. He would not let her go without a fight. His love for Aduni was worth any risk, any consequence. The following morning, Aduni returned to her family compound just before dawn. Her mother's voice greeted her, calling out instructions to the servants who were already preparing for the day. Aduni slipped inside, her absence unnoticed, but the weight of her secret felt heavier than ever. By mid-afternoon, the village square was alive with activity. Olalekan had arrived, his presence commanding attention as he exchanged greetings with the elders. He moved with the confidence of a man who believed he had already won. To the villagers, he was the embodiment of strength and success, But to Aduni, he was a stranger, a man whose touch felt like a shackle rather than a promise. Seun, Aduni's cousin, watched the scene unfold from the sidelines, her sharp eyes missing nothing. There was an edge to her smile, a flicker of jealousy that had been smoldering since the day Olalekan's family chose Aduni instead of her. Though Seun had always played the role of the dutiful cousin, she harbored resentment deep within her, and now she had found a weakness in Aduni's carefully crafted facade. That evening, as the sun sank below the horizon, Seun lingered near Aduni, her tone deceptively light as she spoke. Her words hinted at knowledge she shouldn't have, her pointed comments cutting through Aduni's composure like a blade. Aduni's heart raced. If Seun knew of her secret meetings with Ayo, what would she do? Would she expose her? The thought sent a chill down her spine. By nightfall, Aduni found herself drawn back to the river, as if it were the only place where she could breathe freely. Ayo was waiting for her again, his expression filled with concern as she recounted Seun's veiled threats. "She knows," Aduni whispered, her voice trembling. "Or at least she suspects. If she tells my father—" Ayo's jaw tightened, his resolve hardening. "Then we must act now," he said. But the path before them was treacherous, fraught with uncertainty. Aduni's heart was a battleground, torn between the love she shared with Ayo and the obligations that bound her to her family. In the shadows of the riverbank, under the watchful gaze of the moon, they held each other close, as if clinging to the last moments of a dream slipping through their fingers. The gods were silent, and the winds carried no answers, and in the distance, unknown to them, a pair of watchful eyes glinted in the darkness, a silent witness to their forbidden love. The days following Seun's veiled threats passed like a slow, unending storm cloud over Aduni's life. Though she carried out her daily tasks with diligence, her every step felt heavy with the weight of impending disaster. She could feel Seun's eyes on her at all times, watching, calculating. A part of her hoped it was all an illusion, that her cousin would let the matter slide. But deep down, she knew better. Seun had always been cunning, a snake hidden in plain sight. Though she wore the mask of a loyal cousin, her envy of Aduni had long festered in the shadows. Aduni's beauty, her grace, and now her betrothal to Olalekan. Seun saw all these as things that could have been hers, and now she had the power to upend everything. It began subtly. Aduni noticed whispers trailing her when she passed through the village. Women paused their chatter as she approached, their curious gazes following her. Her father, Baba Adeyemi, seemed more pensive, watching her with a furrowed brow during meals. It was as if the air itself was thick with suspicion. Seun had not yet spoken openly of what she knew, but the seeds of doubt she planted were already taking root. One fateful evening, the village square buzzed with activity as the elders and Olalekan's family gathered for another round of wedding preparations. Aduni was present, sitting quietly beside her mother, who discussed plans for the feast. Seun, however, lingered on the edges of the gathering, her eyes gleaming with mischief. At a strategic moment, when all eyes were on Baba Adeyemi and Olalekan discussing the dowry, Seun made her move. She stepped forward, her voice cutting through the hum of conversation. "Uncle," she began, addressing Baba Adeyemi, her tone deceptively sweet. "I have a concern that I think you, as the head of this family, should be aware of." The air shifted instantly, tension rippling through the gathered crowd. Baba Adeyemi's gaze sharpened, and even Olalekan turned to look at her, his expression unreadable. "What concerns Seun?" Baba Adeyemi asked, his tone guarded. Seun hesitated, her performance carefully crafted. She lowered her gaze, feigning reluctance. "Forgive me for speaking out of turn, but I believe it is my duty to protect this family's honor." She paused, letting the weight of her words sink in. "I have seen Aduni meeting a man by the river, at night." The words struck like thunder. Gasps rippled through the crowd, and all eyes turned to Aduni. Her heart raced, her throat tightening as the walls of her world came crashing down. Baba Adeyemi's face darkened, his voice booming as he demanded, "Is this true, Aduni?" Aduni opened her mouth to speak, but no words came. Her silence was answer enough. The silence that followed was deafening, broken only by the murmurs of the onlookers. Olalekan's expression twisted into one of anger and betrayal. To him, this revelation was not just an insult, it was a challenge to his pride. Baba Adeyemi stood abruptly, his fury palpable. "Who is this man?" he demanded, his voice like a whip. Aduni's lips trembled as she whispered, "Ayo!" The name hung in the air, heavy with meaning. Baba Adeyemi's face contorted with rage. Ayo, the son of a lowly palm wine tapper, was the last man he would have allowed near his daughter. Without another word, Baba Adeyemi ordered 2 of the young men present to find Ayo and bring him to the square. The command sent ripples of urgency through the gathering as the men rushed off to obey. As the crowd waited, whispers swirled like the restless wind. Aduni sat frozen, her heart pounding in her chest. She wanted to run, to scream, to disappear. But there was no escape now. It wasn't long before the young men returned, dragging Ayo into the square. His clothes were disheveled, his face defiant, even as he was forced to kneel before Baba Adeyemi. The crowd closed in, their faces a mix of curiosity and condemnation. Baba Adeyemi towered over Ayo, his voice thunderous as he demanded, "How dare you defile my daughter's honor? Do you have no respect for this family, for our traditions?" Ayo met his gaze without flinching. "I love Aduni," he said simply. His words sent another wave of shock through the crowd. But for Aduni, they were a lifeline, a spark of light in an otherwise dark moment. Baba Adeyemi, however, was unmoved. "Love?" he spat. "What does a boy like you know of love? You have brought shame upon this family, and you will pay for it." Olalekan stepped forward then, his anger boiling over. "This is an insult to my name," he declared. "This boy must be punished." The elders conferred in hushed tones, their verdict swift and unforgiving. Ayo was to be banished from Ile-Saint, never to return. The announcement was met with murmurs of approval from the crowd. To them, this was justice, a restoration of order. As Ayo was dragged away, his eyes met Aduni's one last time. In that fleeting moment, they exchanged a silent promise. Their story was not over. But for now, Aduni was left alone in the square, the weight of her betrayal crushing her. The celebration of her union with Olalekan was now marred by scandal, her once bright future dimmed by the choices she had made. And in the shadows, Seun watched with quiet satisfaction.